Yes. Okay, so I'm going to start with what was learned in the 70s and 80s about how serotonin works in monkeys, because it was so amazing to me that it changed everything I knew. And it's never talked about because it's a little bit upsetting and people want happy answers, So first, for a whole century, people have gone into the wild and studied monkeys and learned that monkeys are very competitive and hierarchical. And not just monkeys, but all animals. Like if somebody has a farm, if they have cows, goats, horses, they're competitive. And they're hierarchical and they compete for a position of advantage. And the ones that are more competitive make more copies of their genes. And so they're not consciously thinking this. It's not an abstract intention, but they do it because natural selection built a brain that rewards you with good feelings when you assert yourself. So the good feeling is serotonin. So it was learned that when a monkey asserts itself over another monkey and prevails, gets a little bit of serotonin. And if I'm always asserting and prevailing, then I get a little serotonin, but it's metabolized in a short time. So I have to keep doing it in order to keep feeling good. But that's not simple because we can't just go around pushing everyone out of the way and enjoying it. That's not practical. So not practical for a monkey either. If a monkey did that, they would soon make enemies and they would get their flesh ripped open by other monkeys. So it's not designed to flow all the time. It's designed to only reward you with a good feeling when you need to assert yourself in order to meet your survival needs. The whole idea that you should be having it every minute and that other people are having it every minute is not practical and not helpful and not realistic. Mm-hmm. However, we want it. So I don't dismiss the fact that we want it. And also in the modern world, you get the illusion that everyone else is having it all the time. So for so many reasons. So the solution, you could say, is effectively to lie to yourself. But a nicer way that I call that is to make peace with your inner mammal, is that your two brains can get along in a new way. And the simple example of that, many people have heard like an allegory of a rider on a horse or a rider on an elephant or a rider on a donkey. And the rider may think that it's in control, but if you don't make peace with the animal, then you're not going to get where you're going. And the animal is very emotional sometimes. So you have to soothe the animal and explain to the animal and calm the animal. And even still, if the animal sees an opportunity to meet its survival needs, it's going to go for it. So the more you understand and accept that your inner mammal cares about being in the one-up position, then the more you can guide it. Now, the flip side of this is that when you're not in the one-up position and someone else is in the one-up position, your inner mammal sees this as a survival threat. Even though no one consciously says that or thinks that, let's just use a simple example, like you're taking a class, you study, you think you're going to get a good grade, and then you don't get a good grade. So now you feel like you're in the one-down position. And I use in my work a lot the word disappointment, because disappointment means that a positive expectation has not been met. And whenever that happens, your brain releases cortisol. So that's the same as the predator feeling. Even though getting a disappointing grade or a friend doesn't call you back and you're disappointed, you know consciously that it's not a survival threat, but it's the same chemical. So if you don't manage yourself really well, you can end up feeling very threatened a lot, and most people do. So that's why it's quite a skill to learn to manage your inner mammal. And the hardest skill is with the serotonin part, because we're told to have positive expectations all the time. So you always expect to be in the top position, always expect to get the top grade, or whatever it is. Like, we're always being pressured to think we're on top. And that's just not realistic. And so then we get disappointed, and then we release cortisol, etc. So this is the topic of my new book called Status Games, Why We Play and How to Stop. And this is the simpler, newer version of Mammal that you read, which I wrote 10 years ago. And the new book, Status Games, will be out in next September. But I think the real critical thing is when it comes to this urge for the one-up position, we all see it in other people. And we especially see it in people we don't like. But we all hate to admit that we do it ourselves. So I have this list of 30 different synonyms for this feeling so we can see how we use bad words for it when someone else does it, but we use good words for it when we do it ourselves. So a simple example is pride would be the one-up feeling in me. But if it's someone I don't like, I could call it ego, or I could call it manipulativeness. But when I do it, I can say, I want dignity, you know. But when someone else does it, it's like they're manipulative.
Makes sense, a lot of sense. So is there a possibility that our brains lack of these hormones, but for a special reason, like for
I know
a
what you're saying.
medical reason?
Okay.
Or no?
This is a very sticky territory. The medical profession has its answer, and so I will not want to say anything about the medical profession, but here's the thing. Our brain is not wired when we're born. So all of our neural pathways are built from experience. Now, how much is that built from a recipe created by genes, and how much is it built by early experience? The current theory focuses on genes because you cannot experiment with a baby, and also because they're afraid that it would sound like it was quote unquote blaming the victim. So the whole learned aspect of this has been ignored. And the whole genetic it's a disease and it's genes, it gets all the attention. And I'm just inviting everyone, before you rush to this belief, look deeper into the pathways that you built from your past experience. And it doesn't mean blaming your parents, it doesn't mean blaming society. And the simple way that I learned this is reading a lot of biographies. I was stunned to see how every famous person or anyone who accomplished anything that's in the news, when you read about their childhood, you say, oh my God, they were doing whatever it is that we know them for, they were already doing it, like when they were 10 years old. Whenever we have the information about a person's childhood, and it's just amazing. So we are definitely wired from early experience. And if you get wired to have negative expectations, that's all you're going to have, because that's a pathway, but you can build positive expectations. All it takes is feeding your brain new information repeatedly. It takes a lot of repetition to build a new pathway.
Cool.